And so with that, I'm going to call to order the March 1st, 2020 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everyone please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. The first item we have on tonight's agenda is a fairly momentous occasion, and that is the swearing in of a new fire chief. This is not something that happens, obviously, frequently. So we're trying to have let the public know about this, obviously, and we want to welcome Ronnie to this position, as the board already knows. And before we do that, I just want to read into the record, especially so the public knows about part of the background information for Chief Cottrell. Chief Cottrell is a 21-year veteran of the Brentwood Fire Department. During his tenure, he has served as firefighter and paramedic, captain and assistant fire chief. He became a paramedic in 1995 while serving in his home community of Sullivan, Missouri. After graduating from the St. Louis County Fire Academy in 1997, he joined the Ladue Fire Department as a firefighter prior to joining the Brentwood Fire Department. Cottrell earned a Bachelor of Arts in Management from Webster University and an Associate of Applied Science in Fire Technology from East Central College. He is a graduate of the Missouri Fire Service Leadership Enhancement Program at the University of Missouri in Columbia. And Cottrell is part of a cohort in the highly competitive Fire Service Executive Department Institute sponsored by the International Association of Fire Chiefs. Chief Cottrell's experience as an assistant chief includes the daily operations of department personnel, equipment planning and purchasing, and coordinating the department's most recent insurance service office audit. Chief is involved regionally as an assistant mutual aid coordinator for Region C, point of contact for the East Region of the St. Louis County Special Operations Team, and a member of the Missouri Region C Incident Support Team. Chief has also served on several community service boards, including a federally qualified health center board of directors. He resides in Eureka, Missouri with his wife, Andrea, and they have 3 adult children, Kayla, Amanda, and Lucas. So with that, if we could swear in our new chief.
Chief Cottrell, will you repeat after me? I, Ronnie Cottrell,
I, Ronnie Cottrell,
solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Missouri,
I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws of the state of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws of the state of Missouri
affecting the city of Brentwood,
affecting the city of Brentwood,
and the ordinances of the city of Brentwood,
and the ordinances of the city of Brentwood.
and that I will faithfully and diligently demean myself
I will faithfully and diligently demean myself
at all times
at all times
while serving as chief of the Brentwood Fire Department for the city of Brentwood.
while serving as chief of the Brentwood Fire Department for the city of Brentwood.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pretend like I'm in City Hall and stand.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Chief. I don't know if you have any words. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you have anything you want to say, feel free to do so, but if not, no problem.
I'll be extremely brief. I truly appreciate this opportunity. I'm very excited. We have a tremendous department. Just worked for an amazing city with the support of the citizens. It's a truly special opportunity. I do not take it for granted. I look forward to our future. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Chief. And once again, I hate that we have to do this virtually. And I hope that at some point we'll be able to do this in person shortly, and we can really show our appreciation. I hope the fact that we do this, though, doesn't reflect how we feel about you, because we are truly, I know I can speak for the entire board, we are truly thrilled that you're willing to take on this awesome responsibility of being the next chief. And we are truly grateful that you're willing to do that. So thank you. And we look forward to many, many years of service from you.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda, we have no public hearing. We have, brings us to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Next on the item on the agenda is citizen comment. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so, and you will be given up to 3 minutes. Kelly, you will help me out, I'm sure.
Nobody has their hand raised at this point.
Great. That brings us to the mayor and alderman reports. I have just a couple of quick things. If I can find it here. Okay, first thing is the status of Brentwood Days. I understand it's March the 1st, and Brentwood Days takes place the third weekend in September, but it's never too early to start thinking about that. I'm sure everybody here on the board remembers this time last year, things were starting to devolve because of COVID, and we didn't know what was ahead of us. And within a few short months, we decided to go ahead and cancel Brentwood Days. And the reason we did that was essentially twofold. Number one, we weren't sure what our revenue was going to be, if it made sense to go ahead and spend money on that event, given the fact that there was a shutdown of businesses, and we didn't know how long that shutdown was going to last. And number two, we didn't know what the county executive, Sam Page, was going to permit in the fall. Good thing that we did that, because we would not have been permitted to have any type of a Brentwood Days in the fall. And that includes even a parade. Well, that was 2020. Now here we are in March of 2021. We know a lot more than we did 12 months ago. We have in the White House a president who has set as his goal to have enough vaccinations for 300 million Americans in place by the summer. We're not necessarily saying they're going to be vaccinated, but that's the goal, is to have that many vaccinations on hand. Number two, we understand this disease a lot more than we did 12 months ago. And number three, the other thing that I have noticed is that we are much more compliant now than we were, let's say, in May or June of last year in terms of wearing masks, practicing good social distancing. So with all those things together, assuming that we do have the vaccinations in hand and a good portion of people have been vaccinated, and the fact that we are all compliant, people are generally compliant, I asked our council person, Lisa Clancy, at our last, we meet ever so often, the mayors in the 5th district with our council person, Lisa Clancy. And at that last meeting, I asked her to go to Sam Page and ask him to get some feel for what the fall might look like, because it's not just Brentwood. There are a lot of municipalities, there are a lot of organizations that plan on having their event the third weekend in September. Clayton's mayor, Michelle Harris, chimed in. She agreed with me because they have an art festival over Labor Day weekend. And so we both have urged him to look at this, and keeping those assumptions in mind and knowing what we know, what can we at this point project the fall to look like? What is he going to permit us to do? And so we're still waiting to hear back from him on that. I know nobody has a crystal ball, but if we're going to start securing contracts, we have to start doing that in May. And so we need some idea, some leadership, some idea of what we're going to be in the fall, whether we're actually going to be able to do this. Safe bet, obviously, is just to cancel it. My preference is to not do that. My preference is to have some form of a Brentwood Days at a bare minimum. But again, a lot of it is contingent on what the county executive is going to permit us to do. We might have the best intentions, but if he says no, then there's just nothing we can do about it. So I am working with his office on that. Secondly, as far as we're concerned locally, we are going to start trying to resume slowly some in-person meetings. We haven't done anything since the end of March formally, when the county executive put in force his shutdown order. And for instance, in December, I think it was, Bola will correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to have a groundbreaking for the demolition project at Brentwood Bound. And Eric, our director of Parks and Recreation, had put together this layout, how we could all show up, socially distance on the outside with little circles painted on the grass in the soccer park, and we'd stand in there. We'd all be separated outdoors. The county would not permit us to do that. So, but we are trying to ourselves start this up. And the first event that we're going to do is a coffee with the mayor in March. The last Thursday of this month, we're actually going to try and do in person. That will be the first one that we've had since January of last year. And we're going to, I've asked Bola to start working on that with staff to try and figure out how we can slowly transition ourselves into doing this meeting in person safely. And I'm sure there's a lot of you who would, on the board, would be grateful, that would look forward to doing that. But I also want to do it in a way that you're not going to be forced to do it if you don't feel safe. We'll have it set up so that you can still attend virtually if you want to, but if you want to be in person, we can do that. And we'll get the technology and worked out. I know the school board has been meeting virtually for a number of months. So it's not unusual to do this. And I think it's definitely time that we start looking at trying to resume in-person meetings. So with that, that's all I have. And I will, I guess, next up on the Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. I was glad to hear that you said you were going to try to do an in-person announcement with regard to now Chief Cottrell's appointment. It'll give him time to kind of beef up his resume a little bit. I am so impressed with his qualifications and the breadth of his service. What a great addition. What a great chief, and a long line of some really great chiefs in this city. He's going to do fantastic. So congratulations to him. I would say also, I think Nancy and I spoke, we're going to have a Ward 1 meeting a week from tomorrow. We're going to try to do it at 6 p.m. as opposed to the typical 6:30. And we'll have a Zoom connection for that. That's all I had.
Great, thank you. Alderwoman Tice?
No, Alderman Plufka took my announcement, so look forward to seeing Ward 1 members a week from tomorrow.
All right, Alderwoman Sims.
Mr. Mayor, we have a Ways and Means Committee meeting this Thursday, I believe, at 5:30, which has been the new time. If I'm wrong about the time, then I guess check the website, but that's my only announcement.
Great, thank you. Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, let's see, two things. We had our second Sustainability Commission meeting, I guess last week. I think that group is coming together very well. We've been talking through the Citizen Compost Program that we received a grant from, understanding the parameters of how we would get those out. So I think it's been really great to have the expertise we have on that commission to think through that. A lot of people with experience in composting. So you'll see those recommendations working their way through Public Works and back up to the board. And as part of that, also, we had a brainstorming session just to kind of get out on the table all the sustainability ideas. And I really appreciate Eric and Bola's support and everybody on staff for taking those ideas. And we're going to kind of rack and stack and prioritize and start working through all of them. So I believe Sustainability Commission is off and running. In terms of ward meetings, Sunny and I are still working through the details, but we're looking to maybe have a ward meeting for Ward 2 in April. We'll probably watch and see if the mayor's coffee is a disaster, decide if we go virtual or in person. But once again, Ward 2 continuing to innovate, it would be the first in-person ward meeting if we do come back. So that's important. And congratulations to Chief Cottrell. Looking forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Just one question for you, Alderman Wegge. Is the term rack and stack, is that something you learned in Princeton?
Rack and stack, I believe, is a billiards thing, so you're probably very familiar with that term.
All right, thank you. Alderman Gould.
Congratulations, Chief Cottrell. We're honored to have you. I think the next, since everybody's talking about ward meetings, the Ward 3, the next Ward 3 meeting will be, I believe we have it set for March 30th, Tuesday, March 30th.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Yes, last week at the Public Safety Committee meeting, we thanked Chief Terry Curtin on his service and a fond farewell and enjoy his retirement. We welcome Chief Ronnie Cottrell on his future appointment at that time. An update on the speed cushion across McKnight. I believe Public Works at Ladue met back in February. They've kind of wanted to do a little bit more collecting of data, so they'll take it up again at their Public Works meeting in April. Dan's continuing to take data on Litzinger to get a baseline there. Our next public safety meeting will be March 24th at 5:30, probably virtually. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Alderwoman Ebeling.
Just wanted to thank the new Chief Cottrell and I appreciate his serving. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes, as of 4:30 this afternoon, I have an issue. Today is Monday when we have both recycling and trash pickup. Both seem to go well until we realize that a lot of things were not picked up for recycling. And apparently a new policy is in place where if something isn't in a recycling container, it's not picked up. This is an issue for some of the large boxes. We don't have the huge tubs that single family homes do. And there's one person who has something out that looks like curtain rod boxes that are really long. There are double boxes that are hard to break down. There was no notice of this or discussion about what else we can do, but right now this place looks as though it's only half done as far as recycling because there's a lot of big cardboard sitting at the curb still.
All right, thank you. I'm sure, Bola, we can have Dan look into that.
All right, we
We'll
can.
reach out to Alderman O'Neill.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Next on the agenda is City Administrator Report. We have one item under that, and that's the Brentwood Bound update. I see Craig is in attendance. Craig, you want to take it?
Sure. Craig Schluter with Navigate Boating Solutions. Before I get into my typical Brentwood Bound update, I'll provide some general updates. First, the event lawn comfort station building. We'll be presenting the budget update at the Public Works Committee next Thursday, March 11th. Then Christner, the architect of the event lawn comfort station building, will present their design to the Board of Aldermen at the next meeting on March 15th. Next, we have concluded the selection process of the playground design team. So we're really excited to bring that to the Public Works Committee next Thursday as well. And then to the Board of Aldermen meeting after that. Finally, in the consent agenda, this is the highlight of the night. After 3 years of hard work by the mayor, the city administrator, staff, and their consultants, we're excited to bring you all for consideration the final agreement between Great Rivers Greenway and Brentwood. This agreement is the final step, which is a big deal because it allows Brentwood to ask for reimbursement up to $3 million starting this year. With all your approval tonight, at the next meeting, I'll be able to present all the general fund update, which will present that you guys have over $11.4 million in additional funds beyond what is needed for the scope of the work in the project currently. So that's an incredible milestone and is really exciting as we begin the discussions with the playground and other added features to Brentwood Bound. So now getting into my typical update, starting with construction costs, total spent since the last Board of Aldermen meeting is $352,550. Next is soft costs. Total spent since the last Board of Aldermen meeting is $32,138.53. This was spent on material testing, event lawn, comfort station design, a bid advertisement, and property appraisal. Going to the bottom of the update, there are two new additional funding sources. One is you all approved the easement for MoDOT, which is on the former Frederick Roofing property. The city has already received a check for $54,000 for that easement. And then next, we've talked about this previously, but MSD is reimbursing Brentwood for the playground up on Dorothy, and that check was received for $40,000. So that is my update.
You're mute.
I think you're still on mute, but I think
There
you're
we go. Alderman Gould.
Okay. Craig, real quick on the just clarifying on the item that's on the consent agenda, when it speaks about the Rogers Parkway Trail connecting to the Great Rivers Greenway Trail, can you clarify, is that the full Rogers Parkway, or is that just up to the to where all of our construction will be right there at, I guess, Florence and Dorothy and that area?
You're referring to the Great Rivers Greenway?
Great Rivers Greenway, yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So that starts essentially at the tunnel. It then runs south all the way to the Deer Creek Trail at Marshall and Brentwood.
Okay, so when they talk about connecting the Rogers Parkway, it's really from the tunnel on.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Anybody else have any questions for Craig? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which gets us to the consent agenda. We have 6 items. Are there any changes, any questions about any of those items on the agenda? Alderman Waggy.
Just a quick question for Bola or Eric if he's on. I see the final payment for the electric vehicle charging station is in the warrant list. Are we planning to have some form of ribbon cutting, with the COVID caveat, of course, for opening those sites? Or could we?
That would be ideal for us to have. I don't see Eric on here, but I think we could safely social distance and do that, but we would still have to request permission from St. Louis County. So allow us to look into that, and we'll bring it back on that.
Great, thank you. That's it.
All right. Any other questions or changes to the consent agenda? Okay, Alderman Plufka.
I just wanted to say, I don't have a change or anything, but the topic G, I just wanted to say to Bola, I remember when Gina was here as a full-time employee, and she was such a great part of the city of Brentwood. It's great under these circumstances that we've got her back on an on-call basis. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We've got a motion by Alderwoman Sims, second by Alderman Weggie. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Waggy,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman Epling,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 8 to 0.
Great, thank you. That brings us to our next item, which is old business, and that is the bill number 6318. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6318 by title only, please?
Bill number 6318, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance granting site plan approval to Navigate Realty LLC for development of a professional office building at 8419 Manchester Road.
Great, thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill 6318 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second.
We got a motion by somebody and seconded by somebody. Okay, any discussion on this? This was a carryover from the last meeting. Alderman Lockmuller.
I just want to disclose that Alderman Gold and I met with Craig of Navigate. Had concerns about the variances and whether we're approving the variances or the Board of Adjustments approving variances. You know, a hardship needs to be proved that they need these variances. And as we went through with Craig, you know, he kind of described how they've already reduced the size of the building and the fact that in order to accommodate the solar panels and have that net zero certification, they needed that roof area. So I asked him, I said, well, why can't you reconfigure the building? You still got some room on that parking lot to maybe reduce, come off of those variances and bump out the front of that building. Well, the problem with that was, besides the topography, you throw off that parking lot and cause a problem with that cross access to the property to the east. And if you notice that property to the east, that's that mirror and glass building. If they don't have cross access here, they're basically rendered useless as far as a commercial parcel, especially with the MoDOT improvements. So, you know, I'm kind of back to accepting their variances, and I would approve this property going into Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alderman Plufka.
Yeah, I just had a question that came up as a result of the answers to my questions and to Alderman Wegge's questions as well. I too met with Craig and folks from Navigate last week, and I appreciate that they've taken the time to talk to me and to answer those questions in person and then also answer them in writing. Here's and it's kind of a tangential thing. I still don't know that I quite understand the inability to build south of the so-called old, what we think is going to be old flood map dividing line. And if we take all of the explanations that have been given in the answers to the questions, I don't really understand why the 353 Corporation is putting out RFPs for Brentwood bound when, as they suggest in some of these answers, we're 2 years away from getting a LOMR, which would be the prerequisite for a developer building in what is now the floodplain, what we hope will eventually not be the floodplain. I don't understand why we're spending time and money at this juncture if any developer who makes a bid on property within the old floodplain is going to have their hands tied in what they can do or in terms of turning over earth for 24 months. I mean, any conditional use we grant for any kind of a plan is going to have to be redone at least once because those only last a year. So I just don't know that I still understand the explanation that was given by Navigate having to do with our inability to build in the floodplain when we hold on to a clomer at this point, at least an intention for FEMA to redraw the maps, why we can't act on that, at least to some extent, or in some way and fashion, so that the first development on the north side of Manchester Road doesn't subscribe to the long-range planning that we spend so much time and effort trying to put together. That's my question.
Okay. I think it's a great question. It shows some, on the surface, some inconsistencies for those watching. On the one hand, we're being told that Navigate cannot build into the flood zone. And we're waiting on the flood maps to be redone as part of Brentwood Bound. But on the other hand, we're issuing these RFPs. Lisa, are you in a position to respond to that maybe?
Yeah, and I'll try to draw everybody's questions a little bit, hopefully together. But again, I guess first and foremost, we don't have a moratorium placed on this area. And I don't even think that would be advisable to put a development moratorium in this area at this time. So what that means is we don't own the property, we don't own the rights to the property. So if people want to go ahead and make applications for projects in this interim period before we even get the FEMA maps redesignated, they are entitled to do that. So I think we have to, again, just work with each one of these redevelopment proposals on a case-by-case basis. And with Navigate, it is true. They don't want to wait 3 years in order to build this building. They want to build it now. And I think it was asked at the last meeting, well then, can they go ahead and just build to lower elevations that would be required before we would get the maps designated, because we've got the CLOMAR following afterwards. And that's not how it works. If we were to review building permits and issue a permit tomorrow for somebody to build, they're going to have to meet the current FEMA map requirements and also NFIP requirements. So what's going to happen is if either with this project, either make them wait 3 years, or if they build now, and again, they have to build the current requirements, this building's going to, if we would make them go ahead and situate this building right up to Manchester Road, up to the sidewalk, it's going to jet up at least 3 feet, out of the ground. And I actually think that would even look funny and kind of inappropriate. But, again, so I don't think it's even going to look good, but there's so many merits to why I'm okay with the parking being, in this case, up to Manchester Road. And it goes back to, again, achieving other objectives that we have for Brentwood Bound. So citing the parking along, Manchester Road and citing the entrance along Helen can be accommodated then by incrementally adjusting the grade change that is on this parcel going to the northeast portion of the property. And it compensates for that climb of 17 feet of elevation across that parcel that we have. That again has been explained at several meetings. And also citing the parking in front of the building is going to accommodate that continuation of a cross-access easement to adjoining properties, which I think is actually more important to be out there encouraging and requiring cross-access easement than even the building placement up to Manchester Road. So on the north side of Manchester Road, it is different than south side of Manchester. If this was a proposal for the south side of Manchester, the first thing that I would say in a preliminary submission meeting is that you're going to have to put the building right up along Manchester Road up by the sidewalk. But it really is challenging, and for other reasons, you can't do that on the north side of Manchester. You have, fragmented lot depths of the commercial property on the north side of Manchester. So if the parking is placed to the rear, you're trying to require continuous cross-access easement would be difficult. So it would be fragmented. It would also then include several turning maneuvers and so forth as drivers would try to traverse from parcel to parcel. So I would have to say, this project started back in October of 2020 with just having initial discussions with the developer. And when it finally was submitted in December, I think 23rd, I was expecting to see that the parking was going to be in the front and the building was going to be in the back. And again, from a planning perspective, I'm okay with that. I would recommend that. So, the setback issues, I heard that. And what I can say about those setback issues is, once again, it is written, this MC zoning district is written that setback requirements can be determined as part of the site plan approval process. This isn't something completely new to us. This is also a requirement in our planned development district for the same reasons. one of our goals for redevelopment in this area is to densify. That's a John B term. But, again, we only have so much land to work with. So we are looking at having urban density in this area. And the other thing that John would always say is that the redevelopment along Manchester corridor, we gotta start thinking urban development and get away from the strip development that we have here. So again, I'm okay with setback exceptions as long as it's meeting the other of the redevelopment and the vision that we have for the area. So those are just some of the reasons why I still would support this development as it's presented.
Well, I think and Alderman Plufka can correct me here if I misstate his question, but I took his question to be the property, generally speaking, on the south side of Manchester is in the floodplain, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Floodplain. Mhm.
And a portion of this property for the applicant is not in the floodplain. Part of it is, part of it isn't. So what they're saying, what the applicant is saying, we can't construct in the floodplain because it's the floodplain. We got to wait till the flood maps are redone. If that's the case, why is it that we can go out and issue an RFP for the south side of Manchester Road, which is in the floodplain, unless you're saying that anybody coming back responding to the RFP, part of their condition would have to be they would agree to build it out of the floodplain. Is that the city's position?
Yeah, they would still have to follow the current requirements, which also may help with just all of the earth moving that we're doing in the redevelopment area. So some of that we're hauling away could actually be used to build some of the pads on the south side of Manchester.
Alderman Plufka.
But Lisa, with all due respect, the oddness with which you talked about how the building would look on the north side, wouldn't that be the exact same issue on the south side? If you're talking about it looking out of place because it's got to be jacked up in terms of height, wouldn't you have the exact same concern about one building going up before the LOMR is released and then the other development around it after the LOMR is released at various heights? Wouldn't that look just as odd?
But on the south side of Manchester, what you have is your elevation fall is the other direction. It's southerly. It's back to the creek. So you could still do floodproofing measures. You could do parking. So there might be, again, other different things you could do with redevelopment on the south side of Manchester.
Yeah, Craig, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, if I could add something as well. So these developments take years. So the thought is that, eventually the city will entertain a proposal for the development, which could take another year. You guys have already been working on this for 6 or 8 months. And then once you've selected developer, then they have to acquire the property, they have to assemble the property. And all of us know how long it takes to assemble commercial properties. We've been working on this for 3 years to get probably the same amount of property, if not less, than what this developer have to do. So I bring it up that if a developer were hired tomorrow, which is not the case, not reality, it would take them years to ultimately assemble the property to begin construction, which is why that southern piece will move slowly, and which is why the LOMR is not as big of an impact for the southern piece as it is for the northern parcel.
So in summary, you would expect the LOMR to be issued by the time any results from the RFP come into play, whereas the applicant is looking to start constructing immediately.
Correct. And the property assemblage.
Okay.
The property assemblage will take a long time.
Great. Alderman Weggie.
Sorry, fat fingers. Okay, all right. So I think Alderman Plufka has really articulated the crux of this issue, in that we're building to today's situation and today's requirements on something that is going to change. It better change within 2 years, right? And I'm looking at the 100-year floodplain, and the vast majority of the properties have this issue. I don't know. Just something about this isn't sitting right with me, and I'm not sure I agree that we cannot, the board cannot release a floodplain development permit for this. There are other ways around it other than putting a ton of dirt down. You can put some mechanisms in. Knowing that in 2 years this is going to be out of the floodplain, I'm struggling with this, and And then just the other thing, that the setback on Helen, to me, is just still way too close. I completely understand what you're saying about the solar panels, but we're recommending that not be accepted in residential within a couple blocks of there, that same issue. So I'm really struggling with that setback on Helen as well.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's try and take one issue at a time, Alderman Way, and that's the first, the floodplain. Todd, you had your hand up. Do you have something to add to that about the floodplain issue?
Well, essentially, as a developer and procuring the property, you buy it with the potential investment of it being improved by the floodplain being moved. I can tell you when we first evaluated sites for the new project, the new Navigate headquarters, which is going to be built somewhere in the next year. That's the key. We have to build and we have to move. We looked at multiple properties, and this was not on the radar because it made no sense to do it now. Right? It just didn't. Financially, we're paying extra to put it on the back side of the property. Right? If we came back in 2 years and built on this property and moved this building down so that we eliminated the cross access, this building would cost me 15% less. So the decision had to come to Craig and I as developers. Look, we believe in Brentwood Bound. We like the location. There's no doubt about it. We love the city, right? Do we want to eliminate the financial and investment benefit of waiting to build here today? And we're digging a remarkable amount of rock out of the back of that site that is extremely expensive, right? To get this thing level. So to answer your question, Brandon, absolutely makes sense to wait. If we didn't have a time crunch and have a need to move our business immediately, we absolutely would. It'd be financially the right thing to do. And quite frankly, I'd be arguing not to give you a cross-access easement. I don't want the glass trucks coming across my property. I don't want heavy trash trucks coming across the pavement I've got to maintain. Right. So this is a no-win except for the fact that we get to build in a wonderful community on a development we believe in at a premium, we agree. But fortunately, it's just a business decision we made. And quite frankly, Craig was a huge sponsor of that. I mean, let's do this. We believe in the site. Let's do it. I know we're paying a premium, but let's make it happen. So to answer your question, and Craig's absolutely right. As a developer, I can tell you it's going to be 2 years before they're prepped and ready to go. You get a developer on now, you guys are doing absolutely the right thing, getting ahead of it. You're getting ahead of it is what you're doing. You're proactively seeking out developers now. And I can't applaud you enough for doing it because it's going to take a while. Craig and I have been working on this for literally a year before we got to this point. And we got a small parcel, we're less than an acre. Can you imagine the time it's going to take to do much longer? So I've talked too much, I apologize. Certainly.
Yeah, but let me follow up with that though, because there's no guarantee that some developer is going to come in with a large proposal for the south side. We haven't seen it yet, so there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. So it's quite likely that we're going to see piecewise redevelopment of all these parcels on the south side and the north side as people are intelligently seeing the opportunity here and starting to develop. So we could have the same situation over and over for the next 2 years, and we will not realize what we wanted to see in the MC corridor. My 2 cents.
Alderman Waggy, hang on, Nancy. I think Alderman Jeff, did you have your hand up first, or?
Well, I did have my hand
up. I'm sorry.
First or not, but I will say, when Alderman Lockmuller and I met with Craig and discussed all these same concerns, one of the big questions that came up was, look, if you were to do this, given the nature of the, what's the term, the jagged kind of boundary that we have on the north side, would this property, would you build it in the same place? And the answer is, well, maybe not, but given the challenges that we face, if you put that building in the frontage of Manchester Road, you are essentially blocking that very pretty much small property to the north. So if anybody else wanted to do something with that property, there's no cross access, then they'd be looking at maybe trying to buy residential properties behind there, which is not something that anybody on the board really is interested in doing. And so when I realized that you could take that whole building and move it forward, and it basically blocks any cross access whatsoever. It might put it right on the front, but no cross access, right? That's a problem. The other issue that I found was interesting. If you look at the plan documents on page 7, and think about the placement of all of the lighting that needs to go into the parking lot if it were in the back, and how close that would be to all of our residential properties that border there. And right now, I think they've done a really good job of keeping the lighting contained in the fall of the lighting contained in where the parking is going to be and not going to be into our residents. So that was another thing that I didn't really quite grasp until we started talking about the placement of the building and what happens if you push it to the front. Parking goes in back, lights go in back. The other concern that I had was the glare potential coming off of the solar panels that they want to do to create the net zero building. And to be honest, when you look at all of the other residential properties that are there, you know, I've spent some time in the area. Property directly behind, there are no. It's a side of a garage with no windows. So any glare that's going to be coming off, even if it did hit that building, there's not going to be any disruption to the residents. So the only possible maybe time of day at the very end of the day going slightly north, and I don't know, Craig, if you guys looked at the reflection of where that was going to be, if you have a response to that. But that was my only concern, and I think that the angle of the panels and the position of the where they're going to be on the building, they'll be pretty well screened. So those were my concerns, and actually meeting with them. I think this particular parcel is an oddity on the north side, and we're never going to, unless we are changing that line, that northern boundary, which none of us want to do because it's primarily residential. It sort of is what it is as far as the property goes. And I would actually, this property sat vacant for I don't know how long, and I'd actually like to see a good company be on here. So I'm in support of it.
Okay. Alderwoman Tice, I think you had your hand up next.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Lisa about the cross-property access. So I know in this little section, you're describing the cross-property access with the glass company, and that this building on this parcel needs to sit back so that the other property can go in front of it. But so are you envisioning on the entire north side of Manchester that all of the properties would have parking in the front and buildings in the back because of the cross property issues and the irregular property lines in the back?
So it may not go that way, that it'll be continuous from one end to the other. But I think, again, the probability of being able to have it continuous and to actually make it more operational and work is that it's going to be in the front instead of the rear of the buildings. So, but again, there could be definitely a project here or there that, may stop it for a short time. But what we're trying to do is avoid people. Well, hopefully they're going to park their car and they're going to get out and walk to all the places that they, want to walk to on this corridor. But what we're definitely trying to prevent is them being in the car, only having to go down 2 blocks, and then they got to pull out of Manchester, they got to pull back off Manchester. So the more, and I know you understand access management, but the more we can go ahead and have the access points off of the intersecting streets and have a continuation on that, the better off we will be on the north side. But yeah, I can't say that it's gonna, seamlessly work out and it'll be a straight shot, which that, may not be the best thing either, to have a complete straight shot, because then you're gonna have people just getting off of Manchester Road, but they don't have any plans to even stop anywhere. But it's got, what I'm saying. So yeah, that I still definitely think the probability is much better, for having it closer to Manchester Road and in the front.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Sims, I think you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am in support of this application. I think this is exactly the kind of development we want to see happen. I think that there'll be a great addition to the community. I went and looked up the site plan and the subcommittee and the looked at the minutes of the planning and zoning, and I was impressed at how it appears to me how thoroughly vetted this application was. You know, all of the subject matter experts we pay, CBV, the Planning Design Studio, you know, the CBV's traffic report or, you know, analysis was incorporated. As far as I can tell, the Planning and Design Studio's landscaping was, you know, incorporated. There was even what appears to be a light study. I mean, there was a site plan subcommittee that, you know, I think really vetted this out. And so I mean, I'm satisfied. So I would be in support of this, approving this application.
Okay. Alderwoman O'Neill.
One thing that we have not said in all our discussion is that I think this is a great first net zero building, and I'm pleased that it's in Brentwood. Years ago when Alberici opened, some of us took a tour and it was an eye-opening building at that time. And now some of what they have done, we are all taking for granted. So having this go one step forward and having it located here, I think is really a good thing for Brentwood. And I'm very pleased that you're trying to push the limits, and thank you for considering it here.
Alderman Plufka.
You know, on balance, I'm persuaded, especially by the comments from Alderman Lockmuller and Alderman Gould, and really back to my conversation with Todd and with Craig last week. I really wish we could figure out a better way to do this. And it's not, but they are a great applicant. I think I'm in support after hearing everything and all the debate. I think I'm in support mostly because of the effort at cross access and the property to the east being largely useless without it. And regardless of the floodplain issue, that would be lost. I mean, that would be lost in terms of the potential for cross access. And so it's a close call for me, but I'm in support.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? Alderman Lockmuller.
I just want to add that I did speak to one of the residents that abuts the northwest corner of the property. And I know that Navigate spoke with them too. And, you know, they're pretty comfortable. They realize the topography there, they're going to look down on anything that's down there. But with this being a one-story building, and with the retaining wall and the fence, you know, they'd rather look at that than down the road we throw up a 2 or 3 story building up there against Manchester Road, and they're having to look at the back of that, and as Jeff mentioned, an overlit parking lot. So, you know, I know that Navigate spoke with him and then emailed another owner just north of the property, I'm sorry, east of the property. So they seem to be comfortable with it, and so am I. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Okay, roll call, please, Kelly.
Okay. Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
No.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman Ebling.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Okay. Bill number 6318 passes by a vote of 7-1 and will become ordinance 4957.
Great. Todd, Craig, welcome to Brentwood.
Thank you very much. We're excited to move our headquarters there.
Congratulations. Yeah, we're excited too.
Thank
It
you.
brings us to the next item. We have no new business. Down to citizen comments. Once again, if anybody in the public cares to address the board, now is the time to do so. You'll be given up to 3 minutes.
Brian Hansen has raised his hand.
Brian, if you want to unmute yourself and start talking, and we'll let you know if we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, great. Thanks for having the meeting tonight, everyone. I just had 2 comments on the most recent decision made. I think it is great that we have this new business coming into our community. I think it's great. It's exciting to actually see something go in that corner. I remember with the landscaping place, so it is nice to see something going on there. I did have two comments though related to some information I heard tonight. So the MC corridor, I think in the future, for future projects, anything related towards zoning setbacks really should be brought up, especially when it's butting up to residential. But butting up to commercial is one thing, or up to Manchester, but up to residential, something should be considered further into those kind of areas. The other thing is when I look at that site plan from that business that we just approved, the cross property access really falls into the middle of that neighboring property, not to the rear of that property. So now any property owner that has that spot, you know, has to incorporate parking lot access as in part of their development instead of aligning it in the back of the property, which really kind of prohibits some logistical builds on that property in the future. So something else to just consider and look at for giving zoning and on these accesses. That's going to pose a problem on trying to develop that little lot. So anyhow, I appreciate y'all's time, and you guys have a wonderful evening.
Great. Thank you, Brian, for your comments. Anybody else?
No.
Okay. We have no need for a closed meeting tonight, folks. So with that, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you 2 weeks from tonight, March 15th.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.